You're not afraid of the dark, are you?
Susie King Taylor was born a slave in Liberty County, Georgia, on August 6, 1848, as Susan Ann Baker. At the age of 11, she was allowed by her owner to live with her grandmother, Dolly. Georgia had very harsh laws regarding educating African Americans. And with this in mind, Dolly supported Taylor's education by sending her to an illegal school run by a free African American woman by the name of Mrs. Woodhouse. After learning from Mrs. Woodhouse, Taylor continued her education under the tutelage of various teachers, both black and white, including some playmates. But unfortunately, after the arrest of Dolly at a church meeting where she was singing freedom hymns, Taylor returned to her mother of the Isle of Wight. She then moved back with her mother in Fort Pulaski. And shortly after, the Union took the fort, making her flee from her uncle and his family to St. Catherine's Island, where they received Union protection and a transfer to St. Simon's Island. She was offered a position to run the school for children and adults on the island after impressing the commanding officers with her ability to read and write. After fleeing to the island of St. Simon's in April of 1862, her, along with many African Americans, her educational advantage came to the attention of Army officers who offered to obtain books for her if she could organize the school. And at that moment, she became the first black teacher for free African American students to work in a freely operating freedmen's school in Georgia. It was reported that she taught 40 children in the day and many adults at night. She taught there until October of 1862, when the island was evacuated. While at this school, she married Edward King, who was a non-commissioned officer during the Civil War and the 1st South Carolina Volunteers of African descent, later reflagged as the 33rd United States Colored Troops on February 8, 1864. Later disbanded at Fort Wagner in 1866. In that year of 1866, she and her husband returned to Savannah, where she established a school for free children. But unfortunately, Edward King died in September of that same year, a few months before the birth of their first child in 1867. She returned to her native Liberty County to establish another school in 1868. And after slapping a white man, she relocated to Savannah and continued to teach freemen for another year, supporting herself through small tuition changes. But she never received aid from the Northern Freedmen's Aid Organization. In the 1870s, she traveled to Boston as a domestic servant of a wealthy white family. While there, she met Russell L. Taylor and returned to Liberty County to marry him on April the 20th, 1879. She remained in Boston for the rest of her life. However, she would still visit the South on an occasion, and she still kept in contact with her fellow veterans group, the Grand Army of Republic. In the 1890s, while caring for their dying son in Louisiana, she wrote her work entitled Reminiscences of My Life in the Camp with the 33rd United States Colored Troops, late first volunteer, which was privately published in 1902. She died 10 years later and was buried next to her second husband in the Roslindale, Massachusetts. In 2018, she in the class of the inductees of the Georgia Women of Achievement. And on March the 26th, 2019, the Georgia Historical Society erected an historical marker about Susie King Taylor near Midway First Presbyterian Church in Midway, Georgia, commemorating her life, career, education, literature, and medicine. Susie King Taylor, the first black Army nurse, She tended to an all-black Army troop. She never got paid for her work. Yet, she's the first African American to teach openly in a school for former slaves in Georgia.